Excuse me, Dada.
So we're going to start this session. We're going to talk about one of the legends, the first woman ever to win in India. She was the first person to win an Oscar. She was also one of the earliest, or the only woman in the progressive arts group. She was perhaps the first professional as far as costume designing is concerned. We're talking about Bhagavathaya and we're talking about this book, which she I don't know how many of you have read this book?
I would love to have this.
Yeah, no, this is my copy. She signed it for me, and I want to
just tell her to sit.
Today, what she wrote and why we are here.
There are cameras.
She says costume designing is all about giving an actor absolute confidence in the character he or she is going to inhabit, about creating a mood, transporting the audience to a different era or place. It requires organization, artistry, discipline, expertise, imagination, and more often than that, many hours of research. So let me start with you, Ashu, first. How much do you agree? You worked with her on 3 films, I think? 2 films. 2 films. Tell us the process of working with Bhagavathaya, because she's come from a background which is so research oriented.
Yes.
And she's come from Kolkata. I mean, she had a whole stint with Bhagavath Painter. She was also someone who had that immense knowledge of history of cinema and worked her way up through. How was it working with her and developing the costumes and the films?
So good evening. Those are golden words what you just said. It was absolutely wonderful to be working with her. It was an honor actually. And when I wrote Lagan, when the script was done, even before I had anyone on board for producing or acting, I knew that the costumes would be done by Bhagavathaya. And quite simply for me, the most important thing was that here is a person who has almost dressed every heroine right through the 70s. And every iconic silhouette that we see of the actresses, all are hers. You know, today if you make a 60-second trailer on the heroines of India, 70% of the outfits will be hers.
Yeah, that's true.
And that kind of melted it down for her. And I narrated the entire script to her. She loved it. And coming to your question about her research, see, sometimes you do research, you're told that you have a meeting on a so-and-so day, and the topic is going to be so-and-so. You go and do your research, and then you go for the meeting. I've just narrated to her the entire script. I finished, and she said she really liked it. And she said, I have a request. I said, what? Is it possible for you to change the year of the film? Can you push it a little ahead? And at that time, the year was 1885. And I'd chosen that year because that was the year when the Indian National Congress was formed. So I thought that it would be nice to have the birth of the INC and Bhuvan as a hero rising. So I said, okay, but why do you say that? He said, because Queen Victoria was in mourning at that time. And she came out of her mourning by 1890 and the latter period. And that's when all the wardrobe, all the silhouettes of the entire British landscape from black and grey became colorful. And I was absolutely blown because that came just that's a real mark of how much knowledge she had without even thinking about it. And of course I was happy to do that, and that's how 1893 Champaner came about.
No, it's incredible because if you really look at what her relationship with Kapoor Painter, one of the great filmmakers of Kolhapur. And I remember reading in the book where she went first time to the set of Pratibha, where she saw Durga Kote in that dress, and that sort of inspired. And the early reflections of Georgette, a lot of work on Georgette, you know, which you can see when she was dressing up Nargis, or when she was also working with Kamini Kaushal in her, you know, when before it was all about tailoring. It was not about, even many people who do not know this, that even A.K. Hangal was a tailor, and so was K. Asif. K. Asif did clothes, you know, and but that conversion to a costume designer began with Bhanu Atreya, and you can see the range of costumes she did all over. Sonam, you're a style icon today.
Oh my God.
Yeah, you are. I mean, and how do you? And your father has worked with her in 1942. She was the costume designer. You've seen the way she's dressed up, Helen, Nadira.
I also did I did this one shoot where I think there was I think it was Momo auntie, Mumtaz auntie's orange sari which is on the cover.
Oh, yes.
So
yes.
I, to get that drape, nobody could get that drape. So eventually we had to stitch it on me, and I was like, how did she even dance in that sari? Brahmachari. And it's a very iconic, it's like a sari which goes with a golden border. And I was like, that construction of it cannot happen now because there were no pleats on it, and it gave her a very almost, because she had a curvaceous body, it gave her that silhouette. And what I loved about her was that she designed for the actor's body.
Absolutely.
So that is very, very important. It is not only about, yes, the period matters a lot, but to design, where does the hem go, where does the waistline end, where does it start? That, I think, is key.
Yeah. Shruti, thanks. Shruti, you've designed in Jubilee, which is taking people back. Sonam is talking about. How do you view that period to today's period? I mean, I just feel that was so contemporary, and when you compare it today, how do you look at that evolution, especially her work?
I think what she did with her work was she kept pushing barriers and boundaries with every silhouette and every character, though as much as the actor's body type plus silhouette, fabric, I think she worked for the character and the film. So I just feel like now, back then they were very daring. Trust me, they're with the silhouettes that she introduced for that era, that time, it was quite daring. Now I think we all are like floating in the same boat.
But she's spoken a lot about fabric too. I mean, there are two aspects of her which I really caught my attention. One was, of course, the use of georgette, which I said. Second is, if you see Reshma or Shera, or if you see later Lagahan, of course, but the early period, her work with the Indian handicrafts, or going to the villages, finding those colors. Reshma or Shera was such a revolution for me because it was so authentic. Vedaji wearing all that jewelry, that kind of costume. People never dressed you like that because it was still the period of the 70s where you had, at the same time, she did Buddha Mil Gaya with Vijayanti Mala, which I was shocked to see Vijayanti Mala in that costume. I couldn't believe that she would be wearing that. How do you look at that aspect of it?
I think it's mind-blowing because the amount of research that she did when it comes to embroidery, jewelry, everything is spectacular. It is amazing. And of course, Buddha Mil Gaya, she does say that, back then women were not quite that daring to wear those kind of clothes, but she pushed that barrier, hence, great work.
So, if you have to now look at her work, we're talking about she's pushed the barriers, she's moved. But what is that one quality? It's not just about, is it the sense of, not just the dressing of tight fitting, is the sense, but also the sense of colors, which I think is so important because I read that in the book itself that she was matching it to the roses, How do you look at that?
I think we can speak about Sir's film.
Yeah.
There is if you see the film and the way it's been shot, nobody ever seems, whether it's the background, whether it's the cinematography, whether it's the costume, it's almost sir, I shouldn't be talking about your film like that, but it was just what I remember from the film is everything stood out, but nothing ever stood out.
Yeah.
And I think that is just brilliant. That means everybody was in synergy, including the costume designer, including the actors who were willing to wear what the costume designer gave, including the DOP, including the art director, including the director. I think that is a testament to every person on that set. So just looking at Sir's film, you know, whether it was, because there were two distinct styles, you know, there was Western clothing and then there was Eastern clothing. And they all kind of came together. It never looked like they were in two different worlds. And that I thought was brilliant.
Yeah, I think it's tremendous because to do both ranges,
Yes.
which is very rare for costume designers, because you
Exactly.
normally pick.
Everybody's clothes, right? So, you know, I've had some brilliant people working with me.
For initiating everything possible. Yeah, so wonderful. Does your costume designers bring these kind of sketches to you anymore, or it's?
Asked her where she wanted to go or what was her special meal that she would want to have. She said,
For some reason, every director, even though I'm known for my clothes, in real life, every director likes me in simple clothes with no makeup, and I'm always the girl next door. I have never done a period film with jewelry and Indian clothes and like.
that focus she was able to give also because she single-handedly did the costumes. She made the design, made the sketch, and invariably it was the first sketch that got approved. Whether it was with Raj Kapoor ji, where, for instance, he asked her he gave her the vision for Satyam Shivam Sundaram, and he said कि मुझे ऐसे चाहिए. He played some music on the harmonium, and then he said, आप सोचो, मैं जाके चाय का इंतज़ाम करता हूँ. By the time he came back, she had about 7 sketches ready for him, and each and every one he wrote okay, and he paid her for an advance immediately. And it was a very difficult one, my mother kept saying, because she had to use as little